Welcome to Exhale, a Black Woman's Guide to Mental Health. I'm your host, Karen Vaughn, and today we're going to focus on how to relax, relate, release. Yes, we saw Whitley Gilbert on the couch, relax, relate, release, all of that. But when you really apply it to what you're going through in life, especially when it comes to transforming through transitions. I'm here with therapist LaKeisha Johnson. Welcome, girl. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Now, LaKeisha and I met on a panel. It was called Self-Care Saturday.
Yep, and the 7 pillars of self-care.
Yes, yeah. And I needed that self-care Saturday.
Indeed.
It was a good time.
Yeah.
We all bonded, we chatted, we kikied a little bit, but then we got down to business to really talk about what we're going through in the 7 pillars of self-care. So we are taking care of ourselves because we can't pour from an empty cup. But your story was just so powerful to me when you talked about a major life transition for you and what you went through and what you were going through. I would love for you to share your story with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I shared with you, I graduated with my master's back in May of 2023 in mental health and addictions. So during that time, even before I got to the point of graduation, I want to say maybe like 2 months prior to leading up to that, I felt myself just going into like the deepest depression that I've ever experienced in my life. And I feel like a lot of times when we experience things, they affect us in such a huge way. But clinically, like when we go see a therapist for it, it's not as much as what we feel that we're experiencing. So that's kind of like what was going on with me during that time. So I was slipping into a deep depression. I wasn't trying to go to class. I wasn't trying to get my work done. I honestly did not know what I was going to do as far as my career went. Of course, I knew that I wanted to be a therapist, but I'm like, where am I going to work? I'm applying to all these different places. Nobody's reaching back out to me. They're like, well, your resume is exceptional, but like you don't have the experience or you don't have your license yet. So there's nothing that we can do with that. So on top of that, I was still in the process of trying to process some unaddressed grief that I had experienced from family members who had passed away. Then I had failed friendships, failed relationships, failed situationships, like all the things was going on. And my way of kind of coping with that was ignoring it. So it had kind of got to the point where all of those feelings and those emotions that I had suppressed were just coming up for me. And I did not know how to name it. I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know how to get through it. And honestly, for me, I felt a little ashamed about it as well because I come from a background of just being in church all the time. Like I grew up a preacher's kid. Most of the people in my family are involved in ministry in some type of way. So growing up in those type of environments, you don't necessarily hear the word mental health or just things about your feelings and your emotions talked about at all. So me experiencing those things firsthand, I'm just like, who am I supposed to go to? Like, I'm praying about it. Nothing's really changing. Nothing's happening. And I'm somebody that definitely 100% believes in the power of prayer. But also it's like I needed something else in that moment because I knew clinically something was wrong with me. So, yeah, it had just got to the point where I'm like, I don't want to wake up tomorrow. Like it was just so much going on. And even when we talk about like the suicidal thoughts, a lot of people don't want to touch on that subject because it's so touchy, but it's a real thing. Like it's literally a real thing. And of course, I knew in those moments, like I wasn't going to do anything to intentionally harm myself. But when we talk about the clinical terms of things, that's something called passive suicidal ideation, where you have these thoughts of like, I would much rather not wake up tomorrow, or I'll be fine. God, if you just call me home right now. Stuff like that. Because it's like you're so overwhelmed and consumed with your feelings and your emotions and you don't know what to do with it. You feel like you're drowning. And we talked about that as well. And I'm just like, I'm suffocating. I was feeling like I was waking up every single morning suffocating and did not know like what to do with it. So during that time, again, like I was trying to reach out to different avenues, trying to figure out what I should do, where I should turn to, who I should go to. And nothing was working for me, girl. Nothing was working.
So you talk about you woke up every morning, you felt as if you were underwater, but at the same time, you felt as if you just couldn't move, that you could not move forward, thinking that it will go away, ignoring it. And a lot of times we do ignore it because sometimes ignoring things, it does work itself out. But in this situation, it didn't work itself out. Ignoring it, praying on it, trying to have conversations with family and friends, not really being able to articulate what I'm going through. I just don't feel like myself. Yeah. And you're going through a very positive time in your life, finishing your degree. So it should be a joyous occasion, a happy occasion, good stress, right? Like, oh, I'm going to get through this final. But it was so much more for you than that of, walking through everyday life steps and transitions and pivots. Yeah. Where at times it gets to be just too much. So when you got to the point of waking up and feeling underwater and ignoring it and praying on it and nothing was happening, when did you recognize that, hey, this is anxiety, depression, I'm going through too much, I need to make my first step? What was that for you?
Yeah. So I think the moment that I finally accepted that it was depression and anxiety, because that's another thing. A lot of people are like, oh, it's just this, or no, it's just that. Like, no, those two things can coexist at the same time, because a lot of those symptoms correlate with one another. So I think the moment that I finally realized that that's what it was is one morning I woke up and my chest was just so heavy. Like, it felt like it was just a ton of bricks just laying on my chest. And me having the educational background of mental health and different things like that, I honestly just started to think about what those different symptoms looked like. And I'm like, okay, I know this in my head, but experiencing it is a totally different thing. This is insane. I don't want to feel this anymore. And I remember from that moment on, I was like, okay, I know that this is what it is. I know it's anxiety and I know it's depression, but what am I going to do about it? So I started to try to see if I could seek out a therapist. And even before I took the first step to seek out a therapist, I was like, nah, I can do this myself. I'm a therapist. What do I need to go get help from somebody else for? I can do this. But I'm like, no, I need somebody else that can give me the clinical advice and the wisdom and the guidance that is coming from an outside perspective. Because that's another thing. I feel like as women and as Black women, we feel like we have to know everything. And we do not want to kind of just surrender and accept the fact that other people can help us and give us guidance and wisdom as well. So in that moment, I'm like, okay, I got to relax, because clearly I don't have the answers, because what I've been doing ain't working. It's not working at all. So, yeah.
And we're used to being on that island, and we talked about this in another episode, of not being able to ask for help because we got it. Yeah. Right? We know it, we got it, we can handle it. And being able to handle it shows strength. Yeah. The opposite of that is you don't want to look weak.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I'm suffering. Yeah. I'm going through all the things.
And I think for me, I had this whole concept in my mind, and this is something that I still kind of struggle with consistently, is having this fear of being misunderstood. Because I feel like as Black women, people expect so much out of us. And if we wear our emotions on our sleeve, or if we show, oh, that did affect me in the way that it did, they're going to be like, okay, well, she's leading out of her emotions.
Or they use it against you.
Yeah. So I'm just like, what do y'all want me to do? I need the help. I do need the help for sure. But I also don't want to feel as if I'm misunderstood, or I don't want to feel as if the emotions and the feelings that I'm talking to you about or expressing to you is too much. And then you tell me that I'm too much. That's the worst thing that I feel like anybody can tell a Black woman. Do not tell me that I'm too much when I'm really just trying to make sense of what I'm experiencing and how I feel in this moment. So the whole fear of just being misunderstood and the fear of someone else not being able to help me as well, all of that kind of paralyzed me. And when you get to the point of where you allow fear to paralyze you, you feel like there's no
remorse.
Yeah.
There's nothing. Yep. And it's the misunderstood part. Or trying to be understood while you're being misunderstood.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm trying to explain it to you and put it into words. I'm already exhausted. Yeah. I'm already exhausted because I don't understand what I'm experiencing. And like you said earlier, it was almost as if I'm just I don't know what's going on, but also I know that I'm not myself. And literally those are the words that I explained to my parents and my sisters. I'm super close with my family, and I thank God for them every single day. But I was trying to get them to understand what I was experiencing. And the only things that I could say was, I don't know what's going on, but I just know that I'm not myself. And of course, when you're surrounded around people that care about you, they're like, okay, what can we do? How can we figure out a way to help you out? What's wrong? And you're just trying to tell them all the things, but also am I really saying anything at all? Or am I just like talking? Because you're really not going to get it. Like, you're not going to understand. So,
exhale.
Literally.
So, when you had the conversation with your family and your friends, you know, you said at some point you didn't feel supported. Do you feel that perhaps you felt unsupported because you're trying to explain what was happening and they didn't quite understand? Because, you know, on the surface, girl, you're about to get your master's.
Yeah.
You're going to be all right.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, you're just a little stressed out.
Yeah.
Or, you know, do you feel as if you could have explained it a different way, or you just did the best that you can? Because we only can do the best that we can.
Yeah, I feel like in that moment, I did the best that I could as far as trying to explain to them where I was at. And it wasn't more so that I felt unsupported by my family. I think it was more so I felt unsupported by like friends and different things like that. I think that specifically when it comes to like my parents and their generation, like we talked about earlier, a lot of people from that generation, they did not have the language to kind of articulate what mental health was,
or the resources.
or the resources, or what that even looked like. So me coming to my parents and telling them like, I know that I'm experiencing depression and anxiety. This is how this is showing up for me. I'm sad. I'm angry. I am uncontrollably crying, like randomly. I'm frustrated. I'm agitated. I have no motivation. I'm explaining all these things to them. And of course, their first response is going to be like, yeah, no, we need to go to prayer. Like, we need to do that right now. We about to lay hands and pray. Let's do all of that.
Yeah.
But also, like, seriously, something is clinically wrong. So I think that in those moments, I felt the support from my family, but again, I did not feel the support from my friends. But I think that also I put on this persona sometimes that I can handle anything. Like, I'm a tough cookie. I don't need to vent to you about anything that I have going on. I'm a safe space for you. You can always come to me. So it's like I put up that persona so people have that perspective of me because of my own doing, right? Like, a lot of times we don't want to acknowledge, like, people have this perspective of us because of the way that we choose to show up.
Or do we want to be needed?
That too as well. So I think that even in those moments, I kind of had to just realize, like, it's okay for you to say that something isn't quite right with you. But I also had to acknowledge that because of what I was feeling, it was so heavy. A lot of people may not have had the capacity to handle that as well. So that's why I've kind of gotten into the whole thing of asking my friends and family before I come to them and vent. I'm not okay right now, but do you have the capacity to handle me venting to you right now? Because if you don't, it's okay. They could be going through something themselves, or either they just may not be able to carry it. Like, we all carry things differently. Like, I know when it comes to therapy that this is something that I'm called to do. Like, God has graced me to be able to sit with people in their most vulnerable moments and help them heal. Therapist Keisha is not going, that hat, you can't take that off and put that on somebody else because they just may not get it. So I think that I did do the best that I could to explain how I was feeling in that season of my life, but also people perceived it in the way that only they could perceive it. And I can't fault them for that. So
So when we talk about transitions, like I'm thinking back, like when I was about to graduate from college, right? And I was just very nervous of what next was.
Yeah.
You think, since kindergarten, I've been told to go to school, get good grades, you're going to college, right? College is about to be over.
Yeah.
What
am I supposed to do?
What does that mean? Go to work, get a job? It's not as easy, right? So I was experiencing some anxiety of, ooh, what's next? Am I gonna have a full-time job?
Yeah.
Do I have to prove myself to my parents, right? That I can get a full-time job and I'm not gonna come home and just, you know, live with my mom or live with my dad and try to figure it out, right? Or am I gonna stay in Philadelphia and make this part-time job at a radio station work? Or are they gonna say, girl, you better come home and get this full-time job? So I totally understand, like, you're going through major transitions in your life. It could be getting married, having a kid, starting a new job, leaving a job that you were, you know, an employee at for 10, 20 years and not knowing what next looks like. And that could be daunting, right? So just in your professional world, you're going to put your therapist
hat on.
Your therapist hat on, right? When we are going through these different types of life transitions, and also I just remember taking a test, and it was is it asks you what you have gone through and the items in your life that can cause the most stress.
Yeah.
And death in starting a new job or losing a job are like, 1, 2, and 3. This was years ago, so I don't know what it is now. But as one walks through different transitions in their lives, especially big ones, what are some advice that you can share about, okay, let's relax.
Yeah.
Let's work through it, relax, relate, release. How do we relax, relate, release through it? I know you have your process as well, but just in that sense, what is your advice?
Yeah, so like I told you earlier, the whole thing about the emotional process, I use that with myself and I use it with my clients. So I always tell them as we go through anything in life, regardless if it's a big transition or a little transition, feelings and emotions come with that. It's tied and attached to it. It's completely normal. Our feelings our emotions are not our enemy. They're literally our friend. So the way that I help myself and the way that I help my clients is with that emotional process piece. So identifying what you're feeling and then accepting what you're feeling and then addressing it and then releasing it. That is literally what got me through the depression and the anxiety. And I think for me, like I shared with you when we were on the phone, I had skipped all those steps and I immediately went to the release portion. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be on my hands and knees laying before the Lord and I'm going to be praying. And then I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work out because that's me allowing myself to have a physical release as well. And then if I need to pause for a second and I'm in the car driving and I need to cry, that's going to be a form of release as well, an emotional release. So I skipped all of those other steps and I immediately went to the release.
Because you want it gone.
I want it gone.
Yeah.
That's all I cared about. I didn't want to figure out what the root cause of it was. I didn't want to accept where I was at because I felt like if I accepted it, that it would literally continue to make me feel like I was drowning. So I skipped all of those steps and went immediately to release. But then after I released it, they would come right back. So it was just a cycle of me releasing, feeling. And I'm like, I cannot do this anymore. So I literally had to take a step back and just ask myself, how am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? And what can I do about it? So that's where that emotional process came in at for me. But then the other thing was just giving myself grace because I'm one of those people where I have to know for sure what's next. And as we go through life, we're not going to know for sure about anything. Literally everything is just a faith journey. And we have to take those steps and give ourselves the grace to make mistakes, give ourselves the grace to learn lessons, to fail, to experience new things. So give yourself grace. That's the only way that you're really going to be able to transform and transition through the different seasons of life.
So as you're going through the cycle, identify, accept, address, and release, and you kept going back to identify, when did you realize, like, okay, this is what it is, and I have to accept it? When did you get to the accept piece? Because you identified it quite honestly and clearly what it was. What did you have to walk through to accept it?
Honestly, I don't think I was able to fully accept it until I started going to therapy. Okay. Because my therapist, she was literally amazing. Like, amazing. I'm actually seeing her on Thursday, so I'll see you on Thursday. But she is what helped me to accept where I was at. Because, again, I felt like something inside of me was like, if you sit with this, then it's literally not going to allow you to move forward. And I feel like a lot of times when it comes to our emotions and our feelings, we're afraid to accept things because we know the magnitude of them. We know the heaviness of it and how uncomfortable sitting with some of those emotions are. But I remember she said something so profound to me, which was that as we go through life, the only thing that we really are supposed to really grasp and hold on to is just how to handle the hard things better. And she said, until you're able to handle the hard things better, you're never going to be able to fully accept where you are. And you're never, going back to that mindfulness piece, you're never going to be able to just embrace the present moment and enjoy where God currently has you at. So when she said that to me, just learning how to handle the hard things better, I said, okay, I have to accept where I currently am at in life, because I know also that I'm not experiencing this for no reason at all. Like there's a reason why I'm experiencing this, and that reason was for me to be able to help other people through it. But yeah, I was not able to accept that fully until after sessions on top of sessions on top of sessions with her telling me the same thing over and over and over and over again.
And you also went through a cycle of actually getting to the therapist that you have now, because your first therapist ghosted you.
Y'all, my therapist ghosted me.
Oh,
so
that is not good.
Not at all. Not at all. So finding a therapist journey. My journey was, I remember I got connected to one therapist. We had one session together, and it wasn't in my nature to just be able to be vulnerable and open with somebody like immediately. But because I felt like I was in crisis mode and I just needed help right then and there, I'm like, okay, first session, I'm laying it all on her, and I hope she ready. I hope she ready. I hope she can handle it. So I remember we had our first session. I laid everything out on her. The next week we were supposed to meet again. She literally ghosted me. Didn't hear from her. So, I mean, to somebody that's already experiencing depression and anxiety, I'm like, dang, I'm already trying to advocate for myself. I just basically spill my heart out to you, and then you are gone. And then that also goes back to the feelings of, am I too much? Are my feelings and my emotions too much?
Did I explain it correctly?
Yeah.
Am I misunderstood?
Yeah. Or did I give you too much too early on?
But that's their job.
Exactly. So I'm like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that anymore. So, and she ended up reaching back out to me and explained to me like why she had kind of went go. Regardless, you went go. So we just not going to worry about that anymore.
Right. We've moved on.
Right. So then I ended up getting connected to another therapist. There were some issues within my insurance. I remember this vividly. I was on the phone with the insurance company in the car with my mom, trying to get stuff situated, figured out or whatever. And they basically were like, yeah, no, you're going to have to pay full price for all this stuff. I'm like, I'm graduating college. Like, I haven't started my career. Like, y'all got to meet me halfway. And long story short, they're like, no, you owe us like X amount of money. If you want to keep seeing this therapist, it's still going to be that same amount of money. And anybody that's dealt with insurance companies know that they can be so ruthless. Sometimes they do not care about how you feel. So in that moment, I broke down in tears. I'm like, I'm sick of this. Like, I literally cannot deal with this. And I feel so deeply for some of my clients now too who have issues with insurance, because I get it. Like, you're already in a vulnerable state, literally feeling as if you're fighting for your life every single day. And then I got to fight with the people that's supposed to be helping me. Like, it's just a lot. But when I did get connected to the therapist that I'm with now, like, everything immediately, we hit the ground running and just been like this ever since. So,
all right. Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday. I hope she ready. I ain't talked to her in like a month, so I hope she ready.
You have some. I get it. And it's great to be able to look at, going to therapy as, I can't wait. Yeah. I want to be able to lay some things on the table. I'm working through some things that I want to talk deeply about to someone, not like, oh, I got to go to therapy. Yeah. You're just feeling a little down about it, or a little scared, a little hesitant, like you're going into the principal's office, right? How can one approach going to therapy to where it's not as daunting, and you don't feel like you're going to the principal's office, where you're going to a place and to someone that has an open heart and helping you with your mindfulness? Yeah,
I think, well, for starters, just realizing that your therapist is a human too. Like, yes, they have like this clinical background and all of these expertise and license and different things like that, but they're an individual themselves. They've been through life experiences as well, and they're literally just there to help you out and to help you become a better person. I think that a lot of times people go into therapy sessions thinking that their therapist is just going to beat up on them and identify all the negatives and the things that they've done wrong in life. But even out of the mistakes that we make in life, there's still strengths within it. And there's lessons that we learn from those mistakes as well. So literally the only thing that I say is the way that you take pressure off of yourself by going into a therapy session is just making sure that you realize, I'm just going into this session to become better. That's it.
So we talked about you identifying, we talked about you accepting, and then when did you get to the addressing part as you going through your sessions?
Yeah, so I believe I was like 4 sessions in when I got to the point where I was really ready to address like what I was experiencing and what I had experienced in the past. And when I got to that point, it was like, okay, what's the plan? Like, what are we going to do? Step by step, because I'm a detailed person. I need steps. Like, what is this process going to look like? So once me and my therapist were able to come up with a detailed process and a plan of how I can kind of manage the heaviness of the emotions I was feeling through the transitions, because regardless, life doesn't stop. It's going to keep going. So again, it goes back to, how do you handle the hard better? Yeah. So we came up with a detailed plan of how I can handle the hard in a better way. And then once I started applying those steps, I felt like I was able to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have worked through what was a very difficult point in your life, right? You finished school.
Yeah. Praise God.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
You identified, you accepted, you addressed, and we know you have no issue releasing because you were
Not at
releasing
all.
from the beginning.
Exactly.
Right? So what does LaKeisha do for LaKeisha?
That's a good question.
What do you do for your me time self-care? What do you do for you?
Yeah, I think in no particular order, number one, the gym is my safe haven. Like, I'm a heavy lifting girly, so I go to the gym all the time. I try to go at least 4 times a week. So yeah, going to the gym, heavy lifting, making sure that I'm spending quality time, like with my friends and family. That's super important to me as well, because community definitely matters. Of course, prayer, meditating on the word of God, worship, all of those different things. I'm also somebody that loves to shop, so I would say shopping too. All of those things are self-care to me. I love being around nature too, so like hiking, doing those different things. I think that the nature piece is the number one thing that has helped me the most, because when I think back on that season of my life when I was going through the depression and the anxiety, the biggest thing that helped me was I would literally go sit in parks. And I would take walks around the park. I would listen to music and literally just do like deep breathing while I was in nature. And that really helped me feel as if I was giving some movement to the things that I was feeling and my emotions and stuff like that. So I would say in a nutshell, that's what I do for self-care. I try to stick to it, but I be busy. So, yeah.
Yeah, you shared that when we were doing the Self-Care Saturday event about being out in nature, and I so connected with you on that. I grew up in Connecticut. I'm a beach girl, 7 minutes away from the beach. Every time I go home, I go to that same spot on the beach, the same bench, it's there, and I just sit there. And I just watch the waves come in and watch them go out. And it's something about, you know, the sand on my feet, between my toes, and breathing in the salt of the sea, and watching and hearing the sounds of the ocean, and the birds, you know, chirping, and just hearing natural sounds of, you know, people walking and talking and having a good time on the beach is just really my peace place. But I can't get to it because I'm here. So my my best alternative is my patio. There's no water, but sometimes the way the wind goes through those trees, I feel like I'm at the ocean when I close my eyes. But it's all finding that also that peace place where you could just let go and you can be vulnerable. So how does embracing being vulnerable contribute to our mental well-being during challenging times? Why is that just so important?
Yeah, I think vulnerability and honesty go hand in hand. They connect with one another. And if we're unable to be honest, we're unable to be vulnerable. And the only way that we can really like get through situations, get through tough seasons of our lives, different things like that, is if we have that vulnerability piece. And like me and you talked about earlier, the only way that people can really deeply connect with you on a different type of level is if they're able to see that genuine, vulnerable spirit that you have within you. So I always just tell people, like, embrace your vulnerability. Don't feel ashamed about it. Like, everybody, again, may not be able to handle it. They may not be able to understand it. But when you lead with vulnerability, people are able to connect with you on a deeper level. And also, I think that just like scripture says, not even to get super spiritual, but we are overcome by the words of our testimony.
Yes.
I can't try to water down my testimony because that's not me being vulnerable, right? And I know that I experienced this to help someone else get through it as well. So I need to show my vulnerability so that way I can be able to get the message across and help you with where you're at as well.
Yeah. That's it. Helping each other. And being in that vulnerable place where we can just let go. And release it, as you talked about.
Yep, absolutely.
So when we think about what our friends could be going through and the different transitions that we're going through together, I love what you talked about. There's 2 things that you've talked about, and one thing that you told me that we're going to share is being able to identify, hey, you could be going through something too, right? But is this a safe space where I can tell you what I'm going through because I don't want it to be too much for you? You know, or is it, hey, you're going through something, I'm going through something, let's put on a movie, let's kick it back at home, let's kick back on the patio and just really talk through to help each other. How can you approach and talking to a friend that you have a lot going on, knowing that they have a lot going on, but you know, you're each other's sounding board?
Yeah. I would say transparency and understanding. Because number one, if I'm being, what does a transparent conversation look like? And I use the word, what does this look like all the time? Like, what would that look like for you? How does this show up for you? But a transparent conversation, in my opinion, the way that would look is me coming to my best friend and letting her know, like, okay, I'm going through X, Y, and Z right now. I understand that you may be experiencing something else as well. Like, can we meet up and just like kick it? If you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to. If I don't want to talk about it, we don't have to. But sometimes just sharing space with people can be healing within itself.
Yeah.
We don't always have to share words for us to feel like something happened in this space that was supportive for the both of us. Like, maybe I just need you in my presence to feel supported. That's it. So I would say definitely just the transparency piece. And then making sure that you're giving that other person grace as well. Because if they say, I don't have the capacity to handle this right now, that is okay. Like, don't be like, okay, I ain't talking to her no more because she wasn't here for me in that moment. You don't know what that person is experiencing. Now, granted, if it's a repetitive thing and that's supposed to be your friend and they not showing up for you, then okay, that's a whole other conversation.
Right.
But again, it's like, you know what it feels like to go through things. So let's not put so much pressure on the people that we love and care about to make them feel like, oh, if you're not here for me in this moment, then like it's a done deal type of thing, because it's not. Just be transparent with that person. So
one thing that you shared with me that I thought was very powerful is you talked about, hey, I'm a therapist, but I need the experience as well. So you talked about, okay, I've gone through school, I know all the clinical things, right? But I haven't experienced it. But when you were wrapping up your degree, you went through the experience to where you feel more connected to your calling.
Yeah, I would say right now, I feel the most connected to my clients that I've ever felt, honestly. Because even there was a time where even after I went through like the depression and the anxiety and I was on the other side of it, I almost felt as if I wasn't worthy enough of my calling, because I had gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, I know that I'm not experiencing this anymore, but also when I was experiencing it, it was almost to the point where I couldn't handle it. So who am I to think that I can sit next to somebody and help them make sense of what they're experiencing when I couldn't even make sense of what was going on within me when I had it? So that was something that I had to release myself from as well, because it's like, no, don't allow yourself to feel guilty for your experience. You went through it so that you were able to, so that you could be better able to connect to other people. So yeah, I definitely would say right now I feel the most connected to my clients than I've ever felt. And I'm grateful for the experience for sure, because when they come into my office, sometimes they don't even have to say nothing. I can immediately see it on them. And I'm like, even if you don't need to have a therapy session today, or you feel like you can't push through the therapy session, again, sometimes being in the presence of someone can be healing within itself. So if you want to sit here for 35 minutes or to an hour and not say a word, we can do that, because who's to say that you didn't need to just leave the stressful environment that you were in and come into a peaceful environment so that you can just recenter and reground yourself. So,
well, I'm glad you regrounded yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
And you've been able to release it all.
Yeah.
And just walk through life and just really excelling in your calling.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You've been great today.
Thank you.
Thank
it was
you,
a pleasure sitting here and talking with you. Yes,
absolutely.
yes.
Thank you for helping so many that watch and listen to Exhale. And I also want to share with you that I want everyone to be able to connect with you as well. So where could one connect with you on social?
Yes, so is this camera correct?
It is.
Yes, okay, y'all. So on the Facebook, you can just find me, my regular name, LaKeisha Johnson, LaKeisha, last name Johnson. On Instagram, it's LaKeisha J Johnson. And then also for all like bookings or business inquiries, anything like that, you can contact my email at LaKeishaJohnsonBookings@gmail.com.
All right. Thank you. We'll be reaching out.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you all for listening to Exhale and Be Well.